Do you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Sounds like NASCAR is back. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2026 and welcome to a new season of NASCAR Cup Series action. I hope everybody had a wonderful offseason, getting to spend time with your family and your friends, spending time with everybody at Thanksgiving, being thankful for the things you have in life, spending time with everybody during the winter holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, got to ring in the new year and celebrate the start of a brand new year in 2026. It was a little bit of a wild offseason for myself personally, but things are still going very well. But I'm so excited because NASCAR is back. It kicks off unofficially this weekend with the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium, pending the weather works out, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But just a few weeks from now, the Daytona 500 on February the 15th kicks off a new season of NASCAR, and I can't wait to see these guys take the green flag and kick off a new season. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of things to talk about for this new season with some changes to the rules as well as the cars and some changes to the schedule in general. We got a lot to discuss, so let's kick off and give you the top storylines entering this new season. Number one, trying to go back-to-back. This year, Kyle Larson will look to defend his 2025 NASCAR Cup Series title by trying to go back-to-back this upcoming season. Y'all remember at the end of last year, the wild, chaotic ending that we had at Phoenix Raceway, where a race that was mainly dominated by Denny Hamlin, it looked like he was going to finally win that championship until late race yellow came out for William Byron, blowing a tire, hitting the outside wall, bringing everybody to pit road, and Kyle Larson and the 5 team rolled the dice to take 2 tires versus Denny Hamlin taking 4, and it worked out in Kyle Larson's favor. He was able to get a good restart and pull away from Hamlin and capture his second Cup Series championship. Now, granted, as great as it was to see Larson win his second title, it was in a controversial situation given the fact that the guy that dominated the entire race and a guy that has been trying for many, many years to try to win that championship probably should have been the guy that won it all. But at the end of the day, the 11 team made a mistake and the 5 team made the right call that got them the championship. This year, Larson looks to go back-to-back, and the last driver to win back-to-back championships in Cup was a former Hendrick driver by the name of Jimmy Johnson when he won 5 championships in a row from 2006 to 2010. Larson hopes to add his name to being a 3-time Cup Series champion with the likes of guys like Tony Stewart and Darrell Waltrip this season. Kyle Larson at the beginning of last year had a really good start to 2025 where he was able to win 3 races in the early couple of months of the season and looked to be one of the dominant championship factors. But when we came to the end of May and kicked off the summer, things started to go a little bit downhill for the 5 team. I'm not sure if it was the fact that he wasn't able to complete the double in his second attempt because he tried the Indianapolis 500 and the Coke 600 double for the second year in a row, where the Indy 500 got a little bit of a delay, but not like 2024 with the full rainstorm. It got a little bit of a delay, and then Larson unfortunately wrecked out of the race, which told him, obviously, he had to set his focus to the Coke 600, which he came down, he got in the car, was good in the early part, then he smacked the wall, but then he was able to start to rally his way back up through the field till he got caught up in another incident late in the race. And it started a little bit of a downtrend for the 5 team of Kyle Larson, where they weren't as competitive as I thought they were. They weren't winning a lot of races, and quite frankly, just didn't look like a serious title contender. But by the time that we got to the playoffs beginning on Labor Day weekend at Darlington, the 5 team, despite a relatively bad result, after that it looked like he had some consistency back in his hand because he was able to run well and be more competitive throughout the rest of the races in the playoffs. He nearly upset Shane Van Gisbergen at the Charlotte Roval, even though SVG got the better of him at the very end. He almost won Talladega on the last lap down the back straightaway till he ran out of gas, nearly breaking his super speedway curse of him not being able to win a points race. But he was able to make it to the championship 4 via points, and of course, as we all know, the rest is history, where he was able to win his second Cup Series championship. This year, him and Cliff Daniels look to go for their 3rd title, and I have no doubt that Kyle Larson will be in the mix. The one thing that I really hope, though, for Kyle Larson this year to be in that mix, which you can almost expect, I like to see more consistency from him. We all know that he's a talented race car driver, but it seems sometimes that when he tries too hard to go for the best spot possible, sometimes the lead, he tends to overwork the car and it may go out of control and he may spin out and wreck it. Yes, it has happened before to this guy. He is one of the most talented drivers in NASCAR and probably motorsports that we have right now. But you can't deny that sometimes this guy does take it a little over the edge. If he can limit some of those mistakes this year and limit wrecking perhaps, then maybe he wins a few more races and has more top 5, top 10 finishes than he should probably have instead of being in the outside wall or in the garage. So hopefully more consistency comes the way for Kyle Larson and the 5 team this year. But he and the team, I have no doubt, are going to be one of the top dogs to be battling it out for the championship this year. Number 2, the chase is back. Ladies and gentlemen, no more playoffs. NASCAR has announced that the chase for the Cup has officially returned to determine who is the next Cup Series champion. After a lot of talk in the offseason about what should NASCAR do as far as their championship formats and how the championship the system is broken, the way that the end of the Cup finale and the Xfinity Series finale last year didn't favor the way that a lot of us probably thought it should have happened, there have been some changes made to determining who wins the championship in all 3 series this season. And I have the list here that I'm going to get ready to roll you through and explain the rules of the chase for the Cup and determining this year's champion for 2026. So the chase format for 2026 is using the same framework of the system that we ran in 2004 all the way to 2013 with several key enhancements. The field sizes for the chase in each series remain the same, the top 16 drivers in the Cup Series, top 12 in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and 10 in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. But all drivers qualify this season based on regular season points. The win and you're in rule that provided regular season winners automatic playoff berths no longer exists. It's been taken out completely. Race winners now collect 55 points, a 15-point increase over the previous point system where if you won a race, it was 40 points. Now, it's upped at 15 more points to 55. And points awards for all other positions and stage results will remain the same, but bankable playoff points are no longer a part of the format. The points will be reset for each series, the chase field with a 25-point premium awarded to the regular season champion, i.e. whoever's number 1 in the standings after race 26 at Daytona. The chase will start with 2,100 points, then 2,075 for the second seed, 2,065 for the third, with a 5-point drop for each seed after that. The Cup Series chase spans the final 10 races of the season, with 9 for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and 7 for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. And here's the other key. The driver with the most points at the end of the season will be the series champion. So some of the things that went into this decision, and it was a press conference that we had at NASCAR Productions in Concord with Adam Alexander hosting, with Steve O'Donnell, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Mark Martin, NASCAR Hall of Famers, Cup champions Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, and Chase Briscoe were all present at this press conference to announce the new format. So basically the rules have changed this year to determine who makes the chase. So we remember the format for older NASCAR fans. We introduced the chase format in 2004 because after Matt Kenseth had a very consistent season in 2003, but he only won 1 race, a lot of people to determine maybe we should up our point system a little bit to determine a champion. So NASCAR had made the decision in 2004 to have a 10-race stretch to determine who would be the champion with 10 drivers. Then it got up to 12 in 2007, and if you all remember 2013, we upped it up another driver, adding an extra driver in Jeff Gordon because of the Spin-Gate incident at Richmond. And all that stuff after the Spin-Gate led to eventually the playoff format where we eliminate drivers. No more eliminations rounds included in this chase with this new format. Now, obviously, there will be drivers when we make the chase. Those drivers may tend to have not a lot of points to make up on and will eventually be eliminated based on the amount of points you can gain in a race. But this chase format is rewarding, for the most part, consistency. Because we've seen guys the last couple of years win the regular season championship because they were consistent. But that never really translated to the playoffs unless if you had the most playoff points for being the regular season champion after race 26. This chase format will reward consistency, but you also need to win. Now, as far as the win in your in format being eliminated, I'm actually really fine with that. And I think a lot of people can agree with me that they're absolutely fine with no more win in your end. So let's take, for example, let's say Carson Hocevar wins the Daytona 500 in February. Congratulations, you win the biggest race of the season. But you're not guaranteed in the chase. You have to remain consistent the next 25 races and be in the top 16 in points after the night race at Daytona in August. And if you are above 16th place in points, then those 16 drivers will be guaranteed spots in the chase for the Cup. So let's say you could maybe have 2 to 3 wins, but you're 18th in points at Daytona. Sorry, but you're not going to the chase for the Cup. And I do like the fact that they're doing this to, again, benefit drivers that are consistent. Like, look at the last couple of years. You've seen who's at the top of the points when you eliminate the playoffs and everything. When you look on other websites regarding regular season points, look who's at the top. Some of the top drivers of NASCAR, guys from Hendrick Motorsports like Chase Elliott, who also I think really benefits from this. Kyle Larson, he also could benefit from this. William Byron's been one of the best drivers the last couple of years. Joe Gibbs Racing drivers like Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and of course now Chase Briscoe with him being at the team. And even Tyler Reddick with 2311 Racing has been very consistent the last couple of years in the points when it comes to not including playoff points and seedings and all that stuff. I am very much a fan of this, and also a fan that will have no more eliminations in these chase races. Again, it is a 10-race stretch to determine who wins the championship, but we won't eliminate drivers after 3 races. We won't eliminate 4 drivers. Everybody could still be alive, but then there's going to be a point where you're too far back in points to make a comeback. You're officially, mathematically eliminated from having any chance at the championship. And the way that the chase was from 2004 to 2013, the guy that was the highest in points at the end of those chase races, the final race of the year, would be the champion. Now, everybody remembers, though, in 2011, Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards both tied for the championship and #1 spot, but Tony got the tiebreaker because he had more wins than Carl Edwards. Tony had 5, Carl had the 1 win at Las Vegas. So it's very interesting format to see what we do, and I love the fact that they're also including more points for the winner of the race. 55 points is a lot greater than 40 points, let me tell you that, but it also, again, more points means, more momentum for one thing, and also gives you a really good chance to try to win the championship. So glad to have the chase back. And I mean, Mark Martin, who was part of the press conference, he would have still wanted a full championship season format, but he could, hold his head high and say, this is a good balance between NASCAR, the drivers, and I think the fan base to bring back the chase, which Mark Martin was a part of for many years. As a matter of fact, the first 3 years of the chase, Martin was a part of it and had chances at times to win any of those championships, but fell behind his teammate Kurt Busch and the Hendrick cars of Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon in 04, was 4th in 2005 behind Tony Stewart, Greg Biffle, and Carl Edwards, and then 2006 started out strong, but then his wreck at Charlotte obviously took him out of the any chances to win the championship. But Mark Martin at least could be appreciative of the fact that the chase format, it's a good balance between winning and showing consistency to earn you a spot for the championship. So we'll see how this whole season goes, but I'll tell you what, the whole year will be interesting to see who's in the top 16 in points by the time we leave Daytona in August and start the chase for the Cup. So the chase is back on all 3 sides, and I'm very excited about it. Number 3, more horsepower. That's right, folks. You've also been wanting more horsepower for some of these shorter tracks. NASCAR has announced this year that every single track under 1.5 miles, all short tracks, including the road courses, they are upping the horsepower from 670 horsepower to 750 horsepower. What that means is a little more drive-off speed off the corner, more abilities to try to pass, and tire management will be a big factor. Now, we know the last couple of years that the next-gen car on the intermediate tracks, your 1.5 miles and your 2-mile tracks, have put together some of the best racing we've seen at those tracks in quite some time, because with the old car, it was a really tough time to watch those races where there wasn't a lot of passing. Now, when we had the 550 package from 2019 to 2021, there were a couple of races in the intermediates where they were relatively fun to watch because they could pass a lot, but also dirty air was a big factor. And yes, it still is, but at least some of those races were fun to watch. The short track races, however, the last couple of years with the next gen car have been a little bit disappointing to say the least. And NASCAR has tried every way possible to try to benefit the competitors as well as the fans attending the races and watching at home to see them put on a good show when it comes to short tracks and road courses. Now, they've come up with different tire compounds, maybe a little softer tire means more tire wear and more passing ability, and you manage your tires. Well, this year, I'm sure that the softer tire will be a part of some of these short track races, but we are also upping our horsepower a little bit to 750. And when we had the Gen 5 car the last couple of years with the short track package with a little lower spoiler, but a 750 horsepower included in all those cars, we had some really good races actually on the short tracks and the road courses. And hopefully this year, after some drivers did some testing with this at North Wilkesboro Speedway, hopefully we're going to be in position to have more competitive short tracks and road courses next year. And maybe that means level the playing field perhaps, especially with the road courses where we've seen Shane Van Gisbergen dominate on these road courses for the most part since last year, winning 5 out of the 6 races. But now I think with this increase in horsepower and tire management, I mean, it probably will still benefit him, but it will also maybe benefit other guys to try a challenge, like, for example, his new rookie teammate, Connor Zilic. But there's a lot of factors that go into NASCAR trying to make decisions that benefits the competitors, the fans, and NASCAR as a whole. And I think this is a great move to put more horsepower into these cars for the short tracks, to have some good tire managements and some really good short track racing and road course racing with some beating and banging, racing hard for position, and going back and forth. I cannot wait for these races this year, and hopefully we're all in for some good action. Number 4, lawsuit settled. Finally, folks. Finally. No more NASCAR versus 2311 Front Run Motorsports talks about the lawsuits and everything. That officially got settled late in the offseason, and I can tell you how happy I am. Now, I haven't really talked a whole lot about that lawsuit stuff for the last, year and a half or so, because really it was just like a little too complicated for me to understand, and it was just a little too much for me to really talk about in the videos. But what happened back towards the end of 2024 was NASCAR proposed to all the teams that were existing at the time a brand new charter agreement to sign on so they could compete in full seasons the next couple of years with the charters, which guarantees 36 teams into the race. Well, 2311 Racing, owned by Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan, and Front Row Motorsports, owned by Bob Jenkins, those guys were not really fond of NASCAR's charter agreements, so they went to court with them and basically said how NASCAR, in their words, was kind of really, treating the teams and drivers and everything like they don't matter. They just didn't really like the terms of the charter agreement that they put forth to all those teams. Even though a majority of the teams signed, those two were the only 2 teams that elected not to sign it. So they went to court with NASCAR starting last year, but they let them still hold on to those charters while they were dealing with the lawsuit. Then towards the end of the season, NASCAR revoked those teams with their charters, but still let them compete the rest of the season and had them guaranteed access because they'd run every single race up until NASCAR stripped them of their charters. And then when we came to the offseason, we're like, this comes a very difficult situation now. Will these guys be able to get charters at all next year, or were they officially going to have to qualify for every single race, mainly the Daytona 500, because there's going to be more than 40 cars entered to try to make the race, and only this year 41 can enter. But NASCAR and 2311 and Front Row Motorsports were able to finally come to terms on settling the lawsuit, the antitrust lawsuit, by putting that all beside them and signing a new charter agreement for not just these 2 teams, but everybody else that signed the previous charter agreement. So now everybody starts fresh with a clean slate, charters for each side. So that means that the 2311 entries of Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, Riley Herbst, and the Front Row Motorsports entries of Noah Gragson, Todd Gilliland, and Zane Smith are guaranteed into every single race this season with everybody else now. I'm glad that they were able to finally settle this lawsuit and everything, because it was driving me crazy with having to hear the tweets from guys like Bob Pockrass, Jeff Gluck, Jordan Bianchi, everybody just talk about this whole thing. I'm like, when are these guys gonna be able to settle this thing so we don't have to hear about it anymore? It was getting really tiresome at the time. But thankfully, they've come to terms on this lawsuit and they've settled it, and everybody starts fresh and happy. However, there was one person that was affected by this whole thing, and that actually was NASCAR president Steve Phelps, who, being involved in this lawsuit, had also been called out for recent text messages that he had mentioned about Richard Childress, which I'm not going to go into full detail. You all probably know what he said, calling him Yeah, I'm not going to go in, again, full detail into that. But to make a long story short, after we heard a lot about that, Steve Phelps recently has resigned as the NASCAR president. So I don't know who's going to fill that, but actually, he was the commissioner. So maybe take that away. He's no longer the commissioner of NASCAR. So we're going to have to figure out who takes the leadership going forward. But despite all of that, 2311 in Formula Motorsports and NASCAR, no beef now anymore. Lawsuits officially done. And number 5, changes to the schedule. This year, we also have some changes to the NASCAR Cup schedule, which you would expect every single year. But this year, we've got some fairly interesting changes that I think a lot of you are going to like. So why don't we run through the entire schedule going from the start of the season in February all the way to the checkered flag in November. So to kick off the 2026 season, as I mentioned, we will be having the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium this upcoming Sunday, 8 p.m. on Fox. However, there is some weather in the forecast regarding snow on Saturday that may force NASCAR to possibly postpone the event to perhaps Monday or Tuesday. That's going to be their call depending on how it all shapes out. But it sounds like they're still committed to having it next week. Then, of course, as everybody knows, we go to Daytona for Speed Weeks. We kick off with the dual races on Thursday night that'll set the starting lineup for the Daytona 500. Then, the Daytona 500 kicks off its new season February the 15th on Fox. Then we go racing at Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta, Circuit of the Americas, Phoenix Raceway, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Darlington Raceway, Martinsville Speedway, Bristol Motor Speedway. Then Kansas Speedway gets moved up a little earlier than normal to the second to last weekend of the month of April. Then Talladega Super Speedway to end April. Then we kick off the month of May with Texas Motor Speedway. Then Watkins Glen moves up earlier in the year as a Sunday race on Mother's Day, which I feel like is relatively nice because it is nice out there in Watkins Glen, although the question is weather, because I've heard reports that it can rain there during the month of May. But we have rain tires, so we could run it there. Then Sunday, May the 17th is Dover Motor Speedway, but it is not a points race this year. This year, it is the home for the NASCAR All-Star Race. So basically, it's replacing North Wilkesboro as the host for the NASCAR All-Star Race in 2026. Not going to lie, I'm a little bit intrigued by this, but at the same time, I hate that Dover doesn't have a points race for this year. Hopefully, it gets one for 2027. Then, May 24th, on Memorial Day weekend, Charlotte Motor Speedway with the Coca-Cola 600 kicking off Prime Videos coverage. Then Nashville Super Speedway Sunday, May 31st on a Sunday night. Then Michigan International Speedway, Pocono Raceway. And then NASCAR is heading out to San Diego for its San Diego Street Course debut on the Naval Air Force Base in Coronado. I'm really excited about this race, not going to lie. It's going to be a lot of fun seeing these guys racing on a military base. How cool is that? Then TNT kicks off its 5-race stretch in the in-season tournament with racing from Sonoma. And ladies and gentlemen, at long last, praise to the heavens, Chicagoland Speedway is officially back. It will be part of 4th of July weekend on a Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern on TNT. Boy, oh boy, I can't wait for that race. Then we'll go racing at Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta for Sunday night racing. Then North Wilkesboro remains with NASCAR, but ladies and gentlemen, it's getting a points race back for the first time since 1996. Oh man, it's going to be so much fun. It'll be a Sunday night event as well, and it'll be a 450 lap race. Then we conclude the in-season tournament in Indianapolis with the Brickyard 400. Then USA Network and NBC's coverage kicks off at Iowa Speedway, followed by racing at Richmond Raceway on a Saturday night. Then New Hampshire moves out of the chase from last year into the next to last race of the regular season this year. And of course, we determine who makes the chase for the Cup under the lights at Daytona International Speedway Saturday, August the 29th. Then the chase for the Cup will kick off on Labor Day weekend at Darlington Raceway. Then racing at Worldwide Technology Raceway and Gateway. Saturday night racing with the night race at Bristol. Kansas Speedway to round out the month of September. Then we kick off October with Las Vegas. Then Charlotte Motor Speedway, but also some recently breaking news. The Roval is gone for this year and maybe for the foreseeable future. NASCAR is expected to announce that the Charlotte Motor Speedway Oval will return for the fall race. I'm intrigued by that, but also I'm pretty excited, honestly, because we've seen this car be really competitive with mile and a half racing, with especially with the Coca-Cola 600, and I have a feeling that the fall race could be a very fun race to watch with it going back to the oval. Then Phoenix Raceway, yes, Phoenix will not be host to the championship this season, but that doesn't mean it can't be in the near future. It will be in the middle of October. Then we'll be racing on the Super Speedway High Banks of Talladega, then racing at the Paperclip of Martinsville Speedway the weekend of Halloween, and then Sunday, November the 8th, the season will conclude in Homestead Miami Speedway. For the first time since 2019, 7 years absence, Homestead will return as championship weekend to determine who will be the champion of the new year. So looking at all the changes to the schedule right there, I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about this year. I mean, I think for one thing, North Wilkesboro getting back a points race is something that the fans have been lobbying for some time since we got the track back and made it the host for the All-Star race. The first year was just good to have the track back, even though the racing wasn't the best. But the last 2 years with the tire compound that we brought in the repave, I think have made it very interesting. And who knows what happens this year with the maybe softer tire and the higher horsepower for the short tracks for North Wilkesboro. I've got a feeling we're in for a really good show there. I love the fact that NASCAR is going back to Chicagoland Speedway. The last race we had was 7 years ago in 2019, and that was, again, with the 550 package, but we had a very entertaining race where Alex Bowman picked up his first career Cup Series win in a duel with soon-to-be future teammate Kyle Larson. It was a really good race. They were supposed to run it in 2020, but due to the pandemic, they decided not to do that. And the last couple of years, we had street racing in the streets of Chicago, and as good as some of those races were, we also had to deal with weather for the most part, so that's why NASCAR is taking a break from street racing in Chicago for the foreseeable future. Could return in the near future, though. But tell you what, being able to race on a Naval Air Force base in San Diego, does it get much better than that, ladies and gentlemen? It's going to be one fun event, and I know that a lot of drivers, particularly seven-time champ Jimmy Johnson, who's out there, and it's near El Cajon, California, where he was born. He's also going to be competing in that race as well as the Craftsman Truck Series race. All three series will run at that Air Force Base that weekend. But a lot of fun changes for this season of NASCAR with the schedule and everything. I like it a lot. Watkins Glen will be interesting, being in the month of May and knowing it could possibly rain. Dover for the All-Star race will be very interesting to think about and see what happens this year. I got a hot take, though, that I feel like next year it gets back its point event, and maybe we move the All-Star race to replace another track that maybe has 2 events a year, and we could replace one of them. And I've got a pretty good candidate for that. Bristol. We had it in 2020 during COVID year. Why not do it this again and with the next-gen car? But that's just my opinion. But those are the changes to the schedule for this year, and I feel like it's going to be a very fun year. Now, as I close out this video, as excited as we are for this new season of NASCAR racing, let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, last month, the month of December, was tough for the NASCAR community as we had 3 tragedies occur between 2 former drivers and a family member of one of our current drivers. It was a really, really tough time for the entire community of NASCAR. The first tragedy was early in the month of December. Michael Annett unexpectedly passed away. Now, Michael Annett had some years of racing in the Truck Series and then running in the, what was then Nationwide, then became Xfinity Series. Then he had a stint in the NASCAR Cup Series for a while with Tommy Baldwin Racing and H. Scott Motorsports before he went back down to Xfinity to compete for Junior Motorsports, where Michael Annett would get his first ever Xfinity Series win in the season opener at Daytona in 2019, and what would turn out to be his best season ever in the series. Towards the middle of 2021, he had a little bit of some health issues and scaled back some of his races in this car, and at the end of the year decided to call it quits and hang up and spend the rest of his time with his family. He unexpectedly passed away. We send our deepest condolences to the Annett family as they're still dealing with this unbelievable turn of events. But then one of the saddest days came a week before Christmas. Greg Biffle, the Biff, is no longer with us. A week before, he and his family were preparing a flight to go to the South Islands so he could spend Christmas down there with his wife and his 2 kids, as well as some buddies of his, 7 people on a jet that was chartered under his name. Well, unfortunately that day it was raining very heavily, and something happened to the plane as they had to circle around, and as they were trying to land it, something catastrophic went wrong, and it went down and hit the ground, and unfortunately there were no survivors. Greg Biffle was only 55 years old when he was in that crash. And it's very, very sad to see not just a great driver, because he was. He had a great career in NASCAR, winning the Craftsman Truck Series Championship in 2000, the Busch Series Championship in 2002, and he had a relatively solid Cup Series career where he would score his first career win at the night race of Daytona in 2003. And of course, we can't thank enough, even though he's also no longer here with us, the late, great Benny Parsons, because he's the one that discovered Greg Biffle and proposed to Jack Roush, you should hire this kid. He's got something special. And boy, BP, he had a sight for talent, and we can't thank him enough for giving us Greg Biffle in NASCAR. And Biffle had some really good years with Roush Racing for a lot of his time. Had a great 2005 where he won 6 races, finishing runner-up in the championship. And the last couple of years of his tenure with Roush Racing was pretty solid, but then after that, it started to kind of fall apart to the point where he stepped away from the team after 2016, and at that point was done full-time racing. He did make a brief return, actually, in 2022, driving for the New York Racing Team, where he would compete in the Daytona 500 and a couple other select events that they entered. Then after that, he stepped out of the picture as far as driving a car. A great Biffle, we all remember him as a great driver, but we also remember him for the person that he was. He was a wonderful man that cared about everybody, the drivers, the fans, and everyone around him. And he played a big factor, actually, in late 2024 when we had Hurricane Helene move through the western part of North Carolina, infected everybody out in Asheville. Greg Biffle flew his helicopter out there to help look for survivors of the tragic events that happened there. He played a big factor in helping people out and just caring about him. And I tell you what, I'm not sure if we have a humanitarian award, but if we do come up with one, it should be named the Great Biffle Humanitarian Award. It should be named after him, because the work that he did for Asheville in 2024 does not go unnoticed. He was a hero to everybody out there. So Biffle, the Biff, be like Biff. Be a friend, be a helpful person. That's what it means to be Greg Biffle. We'll miss you, Biff. And then on Christmas weekend, it was a relatively tough time for Denny Hamlin, who his parents, unfortunately, had their house catch on fire. Very, very, very scary incident. And his mother, Mary Lou, was able to survive it. Unfortunately, his father, Dennis Hamlin, passed away due to the events of the fire. And it had been a tough time for Denny and his father, Dennis, because Dennis recently was going through some health issues, and it sounded like he might not have been able to live much longer. And given the fact that Hamlin was so emotional after his win at Las Vegas towards the end of the year, locking up his spot in the Championship 4, that he knew that this was probably going to be the last time that his dad would have a chance to try to see him win the championship. And again, he nearly was able to pull it off until the late race yellow that changed the complete outcome of the race. But it's been a relatively tough time for Denny Hamlin and his family, obviously, and I feel bad for him. I feel bad for his mom, Mary Lewis. She's no longer has her spouse with her. Dennis Hamlin is one of the reasons why Denny Hamlin was able to actually have a career in NASCAR, because he was able to sacrifice a lot to get him the opportunity to race in lower division cars and then work his way up to NASCAR, where he is today and soon to be a future NASCAR Hall of Famer. So, despite all the tragedy, we still honor Dennis Hamlin, and Denny Hamlin did say that he is making a commitment that he will race all year for Joe Gibbs Racing despite these tragic events. So, we honor and remember the memories of Michael Annett, Greg Biffle, and Dennis Hamlin. So, with that all being said, folks, we are ready to kick off a new season of racing. Don't forget, once again, this upcoming weekend is the Cookout Clash at the Bowman Gray Stadium. We have the practice and the heat races on Saturday, as long as they do happen, and Sunday, if things go according to plan, we'll have the last chance qualifier followed by the main event of the Cookout Clash, where Chase Elliott will try to defend his title from 1 year ago. So, what will happen this season? All I can tell you is strap in, folks. It's going to be one hell of a year. So, and I'm so excited to be back to make content with you guys. I'm looking forward to this entire year. Can't wait to go to some races this year. It's going to be a blast. We're ready to kick it off when the green flag drops. So, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, like, and NASCAR is back, everybody. Have a great week, everyone. Let's go racing!